right, ready to dive in. Today, we're going deep on strategy. We've got Richard Rumelt's Good Strategy, Bad Strategy.
A classic.
It's like the cheat code to making smarter decisions, right? For your business, your career, heck, even your personal life.
Absolutely.
And Richard Rumelt, he's kind of a big deal in the strategy world, so we're talking top-tier insights here.
He really is.
We're going to uncover what makes a strategy truly good and how to dodge those bad strategy traps,
Yeah.
those pitfalls.
Yeah, what I really like about Rumelt's take is he doesn't get bogged down in all that buzzword jargon.
Right. It could be so much noise.
It really can. He cuts through it and focuses on what strategy should be, a practical way to solve problems, to actually achieve your goals.
Love that. So let's start with that core difference. What does Rumelt say separates a good strategy from a bad one?
He's very clear. A good strategy is all about focused action. It's not just setting these big pie-in-the-sky goals. It's about having a concrete plan to overcome the obstacles that stand between you and those goals.
Like, you have your destination, but you also need that detailed roadmap of how to get there.
Exactly. A bad strategy, well, it kind of avoids making those tough choices, taking those concrete steps.
It gets lost in the what ifs, the daydreams.
Yeah, vague aspirations, wishful thinking. That's not a strategy.
A bad strategy is like setting off on a road trip, no map, just this vague idea of, I want to see mountains.
That's a perfect analogy. You might stumble upon some mountains eventually, but it's not going to be a very successful or efficient trip.
So true. And Rumelt gives us some really clear warning signs almost of a bad strategy. And they're surprisingly common.
Yeah, and recognizing those signs, it's so important. They can trip you up in any area of life, career, personal projects, you name it.
He lays out 4 big ones.
Mhm.
First up is what he calls fluff.
Fluff.
What is that all about?
Fluff is basically empty rhetoric. You know, those vague statements full of buzzwords that sound impressive but lack any real substance or actionable steps. It's like saying, we're going to leverage synergy to achieve maximum impact. Sounds nice, but what does it actually mean?
It's the corporate version of like, I want to be happy, but no plan on how to get there.
Exactly. All talk, no action. A good strategy gets specific. It gives you clear guidance.
Okay, so then there's the second hallmark. What happens when a strategy, quote unquote, doesn't even define the problem?
Ooh, this is a big one. If you don't accurately identify the root cause of an issue, you're basically trying to solve the wrong problem.
Oh, tackling the symptom, not the cause.
It's like taking medicine for a headache when what you really have is an ear infection.
You're spinning your wheel.
Right. You can't develop an effective solution without a proper diagnosis.
And the third hallmark, kind of touched on it earlier,
Yeah.
is mistaking goals for strategy.
So many people get caught up in what they want to achieve, but they haven't figured out how to get there, saying, we want to be number one. That's not a strategy, that's an ambition.
It's a dream.
A good strategy outlines the how, these specific actions, the resources you need to reach that top spot.
It's like saying you want to win a marathon, but not having a training plan, or even like, going for a jog.
That's a good one. It's about the journey, the steps you take, not just the end goal.
And then Rumelt says, even if you have clear goals, a lack of focus, that can also be a sign of bad strategy.
This is where things get scattered, resources spread too thin, trying to do too many things at once.
You end up doing none of them well.
Mediocrity at best. Rumelt, he gives some great examples of companies that just collapsed because they tried to be everything to everyone, lacked that clear focus, and yeah, spread themselves way too thin.
So you need that laser focus to cut through the noise and really make an impact. It's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things.
Absolutely. A good strategy requires making those tough choices. What to prioritize and what to let go of.
Okay, so we've explored the dark side, the pitfalls of bad strategy. But now the big question is, what does a good strategy actually look like?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we create one?
Well, the good news is Rumelt doesn't just, point out the problems. He gives us this clear framework for developing good strategy. He calls it the kernel of a good strategy.
Oh, I love a good framework. A kernel, huh? Let's crack that open.
So this kernel, it's like a seed, right? It's got all the essential elements of a good strategy packed inside.
Okay, I'm hooked. What are those elements? What makes up this kernel?
He breaks it down into 3 core parts. You've got the diagnosis, the guiding policy, and then those coherent actions.
Okay, let's unpack those one by one.
Yeah.
What exactly do we mean by diagnosis?
It's all about clearly defining the problem, not just stating some vague goal, but really getting to that root cause.
So instead of just saying we need to boost sales. A good diagnosis would be more like, our sales are down because our website, it's so outdated, not user-friendly at all.
Perfect example. It pinpoints a specific issue, something you can actually address. It's actionable.
Okay, yeah, I see how that sets a much stronger foundation than just a vague goal. So once you've got that clear diagnosis, what then?
Then you move to the guiding policy. This is where you lay out your approach, your way of tackling the problem you laid out in your diagnosis. It's like your overall direction.
So sticking with our website example, if our diagnosis is that outdated website, our guiding policy could be like, okay, we're going to invest in a complete website redesign,
Yeah.
focus on user experience, mobile optimization, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. You've got a path forward.
So the guiding policy is like the overarching strategy, the big picture. But then you got to actually, put that plan into action, right?
You got it. That's where those coherent actions come in. The specific, tangible steps you take to actually execute your guiding policy.
So for that website redesign, our actions might be like hiring a web design agency, doing some user research, maybe creating a whole new content strategy, and setting up analytics so we can track our progress.
Nailed it. And see how those actions, they all flow directly from that guiding policy, and they're addressing that core problem from the diagnosis.
It's like all the puzzle pieces fitting together,
Yeah.
to make the whole picture.
And that's key. Rumelt really stresses this. It's not just a random jumble of actions. A good strategy has actions that work together. They're coordinated, coherent to get to that outcome you want.
It's like that roadmap analogy you used before. A good roadmap doesn't just show you a bunch of random cities. It shows you the best route, the most effective way to reach your destination. And if you veer off that route, well, you might get lost, you might get delayed.
What gets me is how often people, even companies, jump straight to those actions without even defining the problem, setting that guiding policy first.
It's like setting off on a road trip without deciding where you want to go, how you're going to get there.
Hmm.
You might end up somewhere, but it's probably not going to be where you intended.
Exactly. And that's where Rumelt's kernel, it's so valuable. It gives you that structure to think strategically, make sure all the pieces of your strategy, they're aligned, they're working together. And he uses a great example in the book to show this kernel in action. He talks about Elon Musk and Tesla.
Tesla.
They didn't just say we want to make electric cars. No, there was a much more sophisticated strategy at play there.
Tesla's a really good example, a powerful one. Their success really shows what a well-defined strategy can do.
It does.
So break it down for us. What was Tesla's kernel?
Well, their diagnosis was electric vehicles. Back then, they were seen as weak, impractical, expensive, basically a niche product,
Yeah.
for the eco-conscious, but not something that could really disrupt the massive car industry.
They identified a real challenge, a perception problem, right?
Mhm.
How did they plan to overcome that? What was their guiding policy?
Their guiding policy was to completely change that perception. They wanted to build these high performance, desirable, even luxury electric vehicles that would appeal to a much wider market. Prove that EVs could be both exciting and practical.
Not just making electric cars, but making electric cars that people would actually be excited to drive.
Yeah, exactly.
So what were some of those coherent actions? How did they bring that to life?
Well, think about the Tesla Roadster, a high-performance sports car designed to just shatter expectations. It was all about performance, style, turning heads.
It's so interesting. They didn't
Mhm.
start with some practical, affordable electric car for the masses. They went for a statement, something to grab attention.
It was a bold move, but it worked. And then very strategically, they scaled up, right?
Yeah.
Producing more mass market models, the Model S, the Model 3, all while investing heavily in building out that network of charging stations.
Tackling that range anxiety issue, a big concern for people considering EVs.
Right. They were approaching it from multiple angles, not just the cars themselves, but the whole infrastructure needed to support those cars.
So smart.
And that's the beauty of a good strategy, right?
Oh.
It's comprehensive, well thought out, all the elements working together, reinforcing each other.
Tesla's story, it really highlights how a clear, focused strategy, it can lead to some seriously disruptive innovation. It's
Yeah.
not just about having a great product or service. It's about having that solid strategy to bring it to the world, to make a
Right.
real impact.
It makes you think, right? What's
Right.
one challenge you're facing right now in your work or maybe even your personal life? Can you apply Rumelt's kernel to break it down?
I love that challenge for our listeners.
Mhm.
Take a moment, think about something you're working towards
Hmm.
or a problem you're trying to tackle. Let's try applying this framework together.
First, that diagnosis. What's the root cause of the issue, not just the surface stuff.
Get specific.
Once you've got that clear diagnosis, think about your guiding policy, your overall approach. What's your big picture strategy for tackling this?
And then finally, those coherent actions. What are the specific, tangible steps you're going to take to execute that policy? Remember, they should be aligned. They should work together to move you towards your goal.
And don't be afraid to adjust as you go. Life throws curveballs, things change. The important thing is to have that framework in place, to be thinking strategically, making intentional choices. Yeah, it really makes you think. It's not just about the big companies, the Teslas of the world, right? How can our listeners take these ideas and apply them to their own lives, maybe on a smaller scale?
I love that. Because
As
strategy, it's not just for CEOs and huge corporations. It's for anyone, right? Anyone who's trying to achieve something meaningful, whether it's in their career, their relationships, or even their personal growth.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. Just think about a challenge you're facing right now. Could be something at work, maybe a creative project you're stuck on, even a personal goal you're struggling with.
Okay, let's walk through it step by step.
Yeah.
First up, that diagnosis,
Yeah.
right? What's the actual problem you're trying to solve?
Mhm.
Get really specific. What's the root cause, not just the surface level symptom?
So for instance, let's say you're feeling stuck in your career. You're not sure what to do next. Instead of just saying, I need a new job, dig a little deeper. Why? Is it that you're not being challenged enough? Are there skills you're missing that are holding you back? Are you even in the wrong industry? Really pinpoint that core issue.
Such a good starting point. Once you have that clear diagnosis, then you can move on to crafting that guiding policy.
What's your approach going to be? How are you going to tackle this? What's that big picture strategy to navigate this challenge?
So let's say you realize, okay, I'm missing some key skills. Your guiding policy might be to focus on professional development. Maybe you'll take some online courses, attend some workshops, find a mentor in your field,
Right, you're creating a roadmap for yourself.
and then come those coherent actions.
Mhm.
What are the concrete steps, the things you're actually going to do to make that happen?
Yeah, break it down into manageable chunks. Maybe you set a goal of, okay, I'm going to finish one online course per month, or I'll go to one networking event every quarter. It's all about having those actions that support your policy, that ultimately address that problem you identified in your diagnosis.
And remember, it's okay to adjust your strategy as you go. uh, Life happens, things change. What matters is having that framework, that strategic way of thinking, making those intentional choices.
It's all about being proactive, not reactive.
It's exactly. This is your chance to level up, to become a strategic mastermind in your own life. We'd love to hear how you're using these concepts, how you're tackling your own challenges. Share your strategy breakdowns with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
Good strategy. It's about clear thinking. It's about focused action. It's about being committed to solving problems.
And it's a skill anyone can learn, anyone can get better at. So ditch the fluff, embrace the kernel, and start creating those strategies that are going to help you achieve amazing things. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into good strategy, bad strategy. Until next time, keep diving deeper.